Do you have faith in our government to protect your savings and retirement? Can a cashless society strip you of all of your financial privacy overnight? And what devastating economic changes might occur in Obama's final months? With world financial events spinning out of control, a great withdrawal is underway, which could wipe out your hard-earned savings and prohibit access to your own money. In the book, The Great Withdrawal, you will discover a simple way to protect your hard-earned money from an out-of-control government. Call 1-800-289-2646 right now to request your free copy. That's 1-800-289-2646. Time is running out. Withdraw from the system now and take control of your own financial future. Get and read The Great Withdrawal, which is a $20 value today, free, by calling 1-800-289-2646 or click the link below right now. Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green and you're tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television. Today's video, you'll learn about the Great Withdrawal. Collapse worse than 2008 coming. This is serious business, folks. I've been making videos for 7 years now, since 2009. And I've been warning that as a result of Federal Reserve policies, a criminal private institution, that we have an engineered wealth transfer occurring in this country, which has largely been the byproduct of the past several years. All these funny money policies, quantitative easing into infinity, Operation Twist, ZIRP to NIRP in places like Japan, Europe, and potentially soon here in the United States. But that instead of fixing any of our problems, reducing the debt, getting rid of criminal politicians and criminals at the Federal Reserve, we've actually only compounded the same existing problem.
It's going to be much worse. You should watch RT-TV. It's going to be much worse. We had a problem in 2008 because the debt was very, very high. Now the debt is much, much higher all over the world. Next time we have a problem, it's going to be worse than 2008. You should be very worried, you should be very knowledgeable, and you should get prepared.
This has been a byproduct of the administration of Barack Obama. And our politicians largely being bought and paid for by the same corporate criminal Federal Reserve New World Order interests that have a very specific agenda: to steal from you, to rob you, as we move through a structural collapse, deleveraging, and decline of America and the US dollar. So what can we do to protect ourselves? And also in today's video, I want to talk about a few different scenarios and outcomes that I see potentially coming down the pike. Scenario number one, the Federal Reserve having reduced interest rates essentially to zero, where they have nowhere else to run or hide. They've shot that last bullet. They're pinned against a corner like Rocky, but they haven't been lifting weights, so they're extremely weak and they don't know how to throw a punch. Maybe entering a period similar to what we saw in the 1970s known as stagflation.
Regardless of who is profiting, we're all going to pay because this country runs primarily on oil. And Jay Backus joins us now live with an analysis. Jay, where are you?
At a downtown Ohio, Bill, where as you can see the price of unleaded tonight is $73.9. That's high enough for any of us who can remember when premium was $27.9. But $73.9 is not as high as it's going to go. Today's OPEC increases are expected to drive the price of unleaded up to a national average of 77 cents per gallon.
But on steroids. This is scenario number one. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's a possibility among the three possibilities that I see coming. And I'm going to explain each of those three. They've been unable to manage the quote-unquote soft landing of 2% inflation, which they say is safe, and managing unemployment, which they like to see around 5 to 7%, even though we know that the numbers that they give us are bullshit because they've been massaged and doesn't include people that have dropped out of the workforce and have stopped looking for work. I mean, I know countless people that have been laid off and just stopped looking for work altogether, but those people aren't counted. Same thing with the core CPI, where they don't look at things like energy costs, for example. It's total bullshit, even though there's inflation all around us, whether or not it's food or housing. I mean, our costs of living have only gone up in recent years, but they tell us there's no inflation. So the Federal Reserve enters this period of stagflation, like what we experienced during the 1970s, of essentially zero growth, which is what we have now, in an environment with where inflation begins to rear its ugly head, soon to be out of control. The only way that the Federal Reserve can respond to a stagflation type environment is by hiking interest rates. Now, there's been an itty bitty beep bump of about, 25 basis points, but essentially interest rates are at zero. So the Federal Reserve could be positioned backed into a corner where they're steadily raising interest rates in an environment at the same time prices are rising out of control and the economy is collapsing. The worst possible, worst case scenario. So that's scenario number one, stagflation and the Federal Reserve raising interest rates into an economic collapse. Not a good scenario at all. Scenario number two is instead of there being inflation and that actually taking root, nothing happens. They keep interest rates essentially at zero. Maybe they even go negative, as I've predicted might be a likely outcome in the not too distant future, just like what we see in Japan and parts of Europe right now. And there's no growth, there's no inflation, but just an immediate deleveraging, death spiral collapse.
So tell me, how bad are we talking about? I mean, you've been talking about this impending recession for a while now, ready to strike United States, for instance. But, we see American economy picking up. The unemployment rate is going down. So why does it keep postponing itself?
Wait. First of all, you listen to government figures. You remember the Soviet Union? The government had a lot of numbers that were very good. The United States now puts out a lot of figures that are not legitimate, accurate figures. You look at unemployment, what they do, for instance, they just stop counting many people. Say they're not looking for a job anymore. So the numbers are artificial in the United States. Yes, some parts of the U.S. economy are doing very well. If you're on Wall Street or if you're in finance, you're doing fine because the government has been printing a lot of money and a lot of debt has been put out. But this central bank is making all of our lives much worse. And the next crisis and the one after that, if we survive the next one, it's going to be really, really bad.
And for those of you that think that's an impossibility, just hearken back a couple years ago to 2008, 2009, where residential real estate prices collapsed over 50% overnight in states like Arizona here locally, or in Nevada or California. And too big to fail banks actually failed, but didn't fail because we bailed them out through an engineered wealth transfer that was a part of the scam in the first place. But, I've done other videos on that scam. That's scenario number two. There is no growth, there is no inflation, just a debt deleveraging collapse all at once, and the Federal Reserve can do nothing. The third scenario, which is actually the best scenario, and I honest to God hope it's the scenario that plays out, it's what the criminal Federal Reserve is betting on and planning for, is that they're able, through this miraculous voodoo at the Federal Reserve, pulling the strings of the global economy in coordination with other central banks. And we know how good they are with that because we just had the worst financial crisis in the history of the world, are able to manage and massage like a masseuse the United States and global economy into a perfect quote-unquote soft landing. They just do everything right. Janet Yellen is a genius. Just like Alan Greenspan, who lowered interest rates to zero and created a magnificent bubble that later popped, was a genius, right? Just like Ben Bernanke was an absolute genius. Just like how everything has gotten better, right? Isn't everything better in America today? So that's scenario number three. They're able to manage the shit show into the perfect, beautiful, miraculous, la-la land soft landing, which I honest to God hope that they do. In my humble opinion, I think that's the least likely of the three potential scenarios. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope we don't experience scenario number one or scenario number two, but we get three. It's just they constantly know what they're doing, and there's no business cycle. Again, it's just growth into infinity, because that's also what the Federal Reserve relies on. There's none of this. It's just a straight shot to the moon forever. Isn't that great? A parabolic move, just like during the dot-com boom, right? Everything worked out there, just straight shot to the moon, just like pre-2008, 2009 with the real estate and the stock market and all the funny money credit. It just went straight to the moon, and it never went like this. That's what the Federal Reserve is counting on. Not to mention war, global crisis, a great withdrawal of countries like China from U.S. Treasury debt, etc. Now, we just put a book out. I just put a book out with Swiss America. I'd like you to check out. It's free. Of course, you can't say no to free. Register below, click the link below, give them your name, give us your name, your phone number, your email address, and get a free copy today. The Great Withdrawal. Learn about Detroit, not Detroit, but Detroit, and how that is just a microcosm of what I see happening through ripple effects across America. Just one example, one state where it's defaulted on its pensions, and a once beautiful, vibrant, eclectic, capitalist city has just gone literally into the shitter overnight, which is what we're starting to see ripple through the rest of the United States of America. So to get that book, again, it's free. Register right now. Click the link below through our partner Swiss America, and give a little information, your name and phone number. Make sure you get it today. So those are the three scenarios likely to happen in the not too distant future. Unfortunately, I don't think that the Federal Reserve can manage a perfect soft landing. I think it's far more likely that we get scenario 1 or 2, and that slowly but surely this shit show is managed and becomes an unmanageable situation courtesy of the Federal Reserve, and it spirals out of control. Again, I'm not the only prognosticator, and I really don't think these are predictions. This is just math. We know that this is going to happen. We know there's going to be a reversion to the mean at some point. I mean, take a look at how oil prices, for example, have already reverted back to the mean, trading near $50 a barrel when they had collapsed the first quarter earlier this year. The Federal Reserve is starting to see inflation across the horizon, and it's pinned into a corner. Again, it either raises interest rates into the perfect storm, or there's an inevitable deleveraging, crash, and or collapse that takes place overnight, similar to what we experienced in 2008 and 2009. And in any of those scenarios, even in the perfect, managed, beautiful soft landing scenario, wouldn't it be nice to know that you had taken action ahead of time? You had seen the crisis before it actually hit, before that storm actually moved through your city, town, or state? Click the link below right now. Educate yourself. I believe in reading. I read dozens and dozens of books. Now, I highly encourage you do so as well. Grab the book below, The Great Withdrawal, for free, put together by me and our partner, Swiss America, and fill out a little information, your name, your phone number, and your email address, and find out today, use them as a consultant on how to take action if you're not already doing some of these things, and how to prepare for the inevitability of these, in my mind, top 3 likely scenarios. I'd like to hear what you think. Put your comment, question in the box below. I'm Christopher Green. Get this video out everywhere, make it viral, hard-hitting it in your face, and click the link below to register for your free book.
But this central bank is making all of our lives much worse, and the next crisis and the one after that, if we survive the next one, it's going to be really, really bad. And what you asked before what that means bankruptcies, that means currency turmoil, that means stock markets dropping a whole lot, that means interest rates going much higher. It won't be fun.
I just wonder, how many crises have you seen in your lifetime? I mean, aren't they all the same? I mean, you always get bankrupt and you always...
Well, but America was a creditor nation in my lifetime. When I was a kid, America was a creditor nation. But since 1987, America's become a debtor nation. And now, listen, we're good at America. In 30 years, we've become the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. We went
so
from
are the
creditor...
crises getting worse and worse?
Yes.
As your life progresses?
Yes. That's because of me. I guess because I'm getting older. I'm causing the problems.
So you also said that when economic troubles arise, it inevitably leads to a war. Now, we see some major world powers, and they're all in economic crisis. Are we doomed to see
watch
war
RT.
happen?
Yeah, don't you see war happening?
What kind of war do you see?
Well, I hope it continues.
World today is very different from world 20 years ago or 50 years ago. So what kind of war do you see?
We certainly hope we don't see World War III.